Hey guys, so today we are going to read The Mitten for our large group, and this is a story that is adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. So The Mitten, a Ukrainian folktale, adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. At first, his grandmother, Baba, which is another word for grandma, did not want to knit white mittens. If you drop one in the snow, she warned, you'll never find it. But Nicky wanted snow white mittens, and finally, Baba made them. Remember, Baba is another word for grandma, so his grandma made him white mittens. And you can see there's a whole bunch of different colors he could have picked from, but he wanted the white ones, as white as snow. After she finished, she said, when you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, but then I will look to see if you still have your snow white mittens. So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new white mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. So as you can see, he dropped his mitten in the snow because he put his mittens right here on his belt, and one fell off while he was climbing the tree. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. So, what was the first animal that went inside the mitten? Right, it was a mole. So, the first animal to go inside the mitten was a mole. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. So when they're talking about his big kickers, they're talking about his feet. He had really big feet. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickers, they made room. So, do you think that, what are these things on the back of his back called? Right, they're called prickers, and they're kind of like needles, so they're really, really sharp. So the rabbit and the mole are kind of like, I don't know about this guy. He's got like needles on his back, but they moved over and made room for him because they were afraid the needles would hurt them. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. That means they kind of went, mmm. But when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. So his talons are his claws. So you see how they're really, really sharp? So they saw his claws, and they're like, oh, we better let him in. He's got really sharp claws. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. That means they're not happy. There was no room left. But when they saw his diggers, which are also his claws right here, they gave him the thumb. That just means they gave him a thumbs up. Like, okay, yeah, come on in. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotted by, stopped to investigate. That means he just like, hey, what's going on over here? Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. That means it made him tired. The fox poked his muzzle in. That's his nose. His muzzle is his nose. So he poked his nose in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. A great bear lumbered by. That just means he just walked by. He spied the mitten all plumped up. That means it just got really, really big. So you notice this big mitten out in the middle of nowhere. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be, but what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged too many times its size. But Baba's good knitting, remember Baba is Nikki's grandma, but Baba's good knitting held fast. That means it held up. It means it didn't break. Didn't break. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn, so about that big. She wiggled into one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. So what was the last animal that wanted to get into the mitten? Right, it's the mouse. The mouse is the last animal here that wants to get inside the mitten. And do you think she could fit in the mitten? No, because there's too many animals in there, right? So she just decided to plop herself right here on top of the bear's nose. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Achoo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. On his way home, Nikki saw a white shape in the distance. It was the lost mitten silhouetted against the big blue sky. So silhouetted just means that it's floating. It's like floating in the air. It's being carried by the wind. As he ran to catch his snow white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. Remember, Baba is his grandma. First, she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he had still had his new mittens. So you can see down here, she's looking at him through the window. And as you can see, this one is a lot bigger than this one, because this is the one where all of the animals were inside of. So I hope you guys like that story today. We are going to read it tomorrow and on Thursday as well. So just keep reading it, and we will discuss it this week. Okay? Bye, guys. Hope to see you soon.